I guess we'll bring this meeting to order. Right with my gavel. First step is to figure out roll call and quorum. I think everybody who's on the committee is here. So we have Daniel, Chase, Ian, Cecilia, Julian, and Melissa. The bylaws say we should have 7 to 9, but that our minimum vote to pass anything has to be 5, no matter how many are on the committee, which is odd, but so we can move ahead. Timekeeper and minute taker. Does anyone want to serve that role? I can kind of see the clock, but I'm also chair.
I can be timekeeper.
Okay, yeah, just to
Got a stopwatch going also.
Okay,
so
all right.
we're in good shape.
Okay, good. So both of you just feel free to, so if there's 3 of us keeping an eye on
Like
it.
a beeping thing, Ian. Oh, you have a stopwatch now.
Yeah, so
With his
I'm
phone.
writing them down.
Okay.
For the,
Yeah.
Mount Mansfield TV.
I can take notes.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Just to clarify for note taking, are we still under the guidance that we had this spring where we're just taking kind of minimal notes of like, it's not super, we had a whole discussion about how thorough the notes need to be since there was a recording now. And so we just want to confirm that they can be not super thorough notes, but they're just like a synopsis basically, and that people go back to the recording when they.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what has to be really clear is if anything's voted on, but there's a number of things where we will have discussions that I still think, yeah, if you can like capture the essence of the discussion, just don't say they discussed X, but actually what we might have come around to.
Yes, we'd sort of gotten into the mode of like trying to capture everyone's sentiment.
Right.
And we were like, we don't need to do all that. So I just want to make sure that I'm,
Yes.
because I missed some months this summer. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, it's nice to not be doing that anymore. That was really challenging to put every single person's initials and what they were.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not needed. Yeah. All right. So thank you for that. How about, should we vote on the minutes from the last meeting? Does anybody have any comments on that?
Nice minutes.
Nice minute. All right. A motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Julian moves. Chase seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. All right. Moving on to changes or additions to the agenda. Is there, did we discuss, was there a change that we were going to talk about at the beginning, maybe about Wright, but he's not here right now. Ian, are there, that's okay.
Sorry.
Are there any changes to the agenda that we should, that besides the Wright Preston issue?
That was the only one I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So last time we discussed Wright helping out with the easements, working with Velco, working with landowners, take a little bit off of Melissa's plate, and also encourage other community members who are not on the committee to participate in our work. He agreed to do that. If he appears on the, if he shows up, he said he might be able to call in. We can just acknowledge him when that happens. So rather than putting it someplace on the agenda, I'll just keep an eye on that and squeeze it in between, if that's okay.
Mhm.
All right. Any other additions or changes from other committee members? Okay, we're on time. We will be inviting public comment as we talk on each of the different topics. We have like a minute or so right now, and do any of the members of the public who are online, would you like to share anything at this moment, knowing that there will be time throughout the meeting to give input, but just for opening? Any opening comments from the public? There's no one in the room, by the way, for those who are online, other than the ACFC members. All right, no comments, so we'll keep going. One of the things that we agreed to do to help keep our 3 committees, the Conservation Commission, the Trails Committee, And the ACFC Better Connected moving forward is to have a standing report from those committees at our meetings, which we'll be doing now. It isn't just necessarily those committees reporting to us, but if there's anything that they're working on, they want to share that we should know about, if there any questions arose or ideas that they wanted to bring to the committee, this is an appropriate time for that too. So we can jump in with Chase. You want to talk about trails?
Yeah, we met last week. The bulk of our time was talking about remediation of storm damage, and we decided to really focus on River Trail because that's where the trail that gets the most use. And so redoing bridges on the River Trail is the priority for the fall. The other interesting thing that's relevant to us is Richmond Mountain Trails, which is the VIMBA chapter, a different group, sent a representative to the meeting, a woman named Kate, who said that they've been really successful in fundraising, and they have a lot of volunteers that are interested in building or supporting nicer multi-use trails. So a lot of people say, I'm a parent, I have 4 hours a day while my kid's at elementary school. I want to put energy towards multi-use stuff. I'm not a biker specifically, but I love working on trails and I want to help out. And so we're going to coordinate with them on that. And that may involve turning the river trail into a more sustainable trail long-term that is more accessible to, and we didn't get into any commitments or details, but there's interest in RMT or among RMT in helping more with that. They also said that they are assuming that they will be able to do trail maintenance on Andrews, and they're planning to be the maintainers of it.
Okay, and so that's Richmond Mountain Trails?
Richmond Mountain Trails, and
Okay,
I guess they have access to a ton of resources, but they actually don't manage that many of the town's trails.
okay.
And so I think that they're saying we have all these resources, we'd like to share them because most of the trails are part of conservation land, which the town trail committee takes care of, right? Like Preston and River Trail and Old Jericho Road and Snipe, or is on Cochrane's land or Cabrera's land. And so none of those are really Richmond Mountain Trails. So, but they have a really strong outreach engine. So there's good interest in, I think, supporting Andrews when that gets going. And I think they'll be able to bring a lot of money potentially for trail building and volunteer energy.
So they want to build the trails or just maintain them after they're built?
We didn't talk about building, but
Okay.
they said that whenever there's a town need, they would be happy to mobilize and help raise money and use their outreach to support whatever. So they're a resource for us.
Great. And why are they, I'm just curious why they're not involved in these other conserved lands, that like how did that division of labor come up between Richmond Trails Committee and Richmond Mountain Trail?
I think Richmond Mountain Trails is a fairly new organization, and they started, I think the things that they take care of are mostly on like off Johnny Brook. They do Chamberlain Hill and some of the stuff up off of Hillview, but they're newer, and the Trails Committee has always maintained the stuff on Cochrane Road, and the stuff that's more closely connected to town land.
Okay,
Does RMT do Sip of Sunshine?
Sip of Sunshine has, no, they don't technically maintain it, but they've helped out.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's an interesting one that I think everyone helps out.
Yeah.
But
So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's very nice of them to offer. It seems like the town trails committee would maintain the town forest in my mind, but I don't know. I don't know enough about those two organizations, but that just seems like an interesting, like they're already sort of saying we want to do the Andrews Community Forest.
Yeah, my sense is that everyone feels like there needs to be more of a melding of resources among eventually Andrews, Cochrane's, town trails. I guess Cochrane's is their own thing, but town trails and RMT, because them being in separate silos
Yeah.
isn't the best use of the energy. Right. So they have a great, they have a more professionalized, they have a paid director position. And it's someone that has like really good outreach skills and social media presence. And so their ability to like professionalize volunteer activity is a little more than town trails.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, question really about the public-private relationship. Obviously, Richmond Mountain Trails is as you said, a member affiliate, and the responsibility is for their members. The town owns land where certain trails are located. Of course, Andrews is one of them. And some of the trails that are administered by the Trails Committee are also public. So I'm just thinking of sort of the chain of command. Does Richmond Mountain Trails, when dealing with town-owned property, report to the Trails Committee or directly to us in the case of Andrews? Is there really any consideration be made of who they answer to, basically?
Yeah, I would think we would decide that.
In the Andrews Forest, or the
Yeah.
Andrews Forest.
I would think so.
And were they imagining to be, you said they have paid folks and they fundraise. You're imagining that this is largely volunteer or largely paid, or a combination of volunteer and paid to help maintain Andrews?
I would guess a combination. And I know they were able to hire Willie Lee throughout the summer, and he went and just reinforced a lot of the trails that were not sustainably built, and they were able to just pay him to go make the trails stronger and patch up a lot of the old trails. But he's also out there volunteering all the time, and then he would put out messages to the rest of the Trails Committee saying, can we all meet and carry this wood in and redo this bridge?
All right, I had two thoughts on that, but before we go on.
Yeah, Paul up there on the.
Okay, Paul,
sorry, I don't know if it's public comment.
I know it's not necessarily public, but we're a small group. Paul, would you like to, you have your hand up. Is there something you'd like to say?
I just want to give you some background on the RMT group. For the past 2 years, we've been building the accessible trails over in Bolton. And we've been going for 2 years now, and we get 25 to 30 people showing up to work on those trails. And there's a lot of energy. We've got kids as young as 10, all the way. The age group is wide and varied, and there's a lot of people there I think that would be an incredible resource, not to build the trails at Andrews. You've already got somebody for that, but to maintain existing, I think that would be an incredible resource for you guys. There's certainly a lot of energy, and I think there's a lot of overlap between RMT members, RMT volunteers, town trails committee people, and I would hopefully you folks would seriously consider letting them maintain or participate in that. That's all.
Great.
I'd also add that my sense, and I can't prove this, but is that most people that join RMT assume that they're joining to support all of Richmond's trails.
Right.
I think when they give their VIMBA membership money, they say, oh, I really like I live in Richmond, I use Richmond's trails, so I joined RMT. And so I know that's true for me. I want that money to go towards.
I'd say 99% of people believe and feel that way.
Right, when you're not necessarily understanding the back of the house admin of the way the trails are
Yeah.
distributed when you
I get
say,
that.
I want
Exactly.
to.
Yeah, so like they hold the resource pot
Mhm.
that is a resource for the whole town.
I think that's wonderful. So let's thank them for offering that
Yeah.
through you or the Trails Committee. I've heard from some folks that are, conservation minded that they would also like to be involved in the whole trail maintenance and such. And I think particularly for the town forest and the history of concerns over the trails, it'd be great if we, invited Richmond Mountain Trails and other community members to collaborate. I think that could be a real synergistic, maybe social capital building thing when they're actually working together.
Agreed. Yeah, and there's no thought on anything being exclusive.
Right. Okay, I see Nancy, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question. I know, Chase, you're the representative from the Trails Committee, but so did the Richmond Trails Committee, the Town Trails Committee, those two are always so confusing. But did the Town Trail Committee then take a vote? Besides yourself, are you speaking for the majority of that committee in what you said? Did they take a vote to support your point of view that you're bringing?
No.
Do they support, or are you just speaking on your own?
There was no sentiment against.
Was there anything to vote on?
I think what he was telling us was that at the Richmond Trails Committee meeting, someone from Richmond Mountain Trails had joined the meeting and talked about a number of things, including their ability to help maintain Andrews Trails. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like really a voting item. It was more or less a discussion. He's reporting on discussion they had at their meeting.
I see. I was just asking to just get a sense of that full committee and what their response was to that offer.
Yeah, Nancy, we're excited for the offer and just committed to furthering communication around it and exploring collaboration opportunities.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we're at time.
We're at time. Thank you. But it's good discussion. Daniel, do you have anything to add about the Conservation Committee?
I'll do it really quick. So a couple items discussed. One was how the RCC can support the community forest. And so I kind of shared out about this idea of administrative support. And so the RCC was really supportive of that ask of this committee to get more administrative support. And obviously reiterate to you all that there's funding there, and should we want to pursue that we could do that, and that the committee was like really supportive of that idea. We talked a lot about the potential RCC representative to this committee, and so there was a discussion about that, though at the time we didn't know who had applied, so we were sort of a little bit flying blind there. We also are doing a herb crossing project. So
A what?
a herb crossing project. So, the signs that are up in Huntington, trying to get those going in Richmond. There's a few herb crossings, some on some more heavily trafficked roads. So, Jeanette's been working a lot on that. I've been working some on that as well. So everyone's kind of excited about, maybe everyone's just excited about thinking about spring, even though it's not winter yet. They're like herbs. And then we also talked about, just sort of the state of some of the trails. Like Chase had mentioned the river trail, like really needing a lot of work in Old Jericho Road. And so there's some of these areas that people really love, and they've just been really hammered by the floods. And so the RCC sort of saying, like, well, what could we do to help out with that? There's obviously a funding piece, but we also talked about like, oh, could we like do a volunteer thing? Just get people out there to, even if it's not like rebuilding trails, which is like clearing out debris or whatever it is, right? Things need work.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been chatting about.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Also listed for this agenda item are procedures for reporting to the select board. I think we had decided that we would annotate the timing on the agenda items and that we might give them like a quarterly kind of update. So I don't know if there's more to discuss right now. I don't know if we need an update now, but maybe after this meeting we will, if we have as some of the issues go by. And I can take the lead on that. All right, anything else? So back to Daniel, Communication Director.
Communication director.
Giving you that, yeah.
Well, thankfully, I can report that there's nothing really to report. I've been checking our communication lines, and I haven't had to answer any emails that have been beyond like emails from Ethan Tapper about events coming up. So yeah, nothing to report. I'll continue to monitor those channels. And if anyone gets any information from other channels, like we have Instagram, Facebook, and a Gmail account. And so, yeah, if anyone sees anything and I have missed it, just let me know. But I think I've got my eyes on all the things. So.
And the plan is whenever you get something, do you CC it to the whole committee and then as well as make sure it's archived somewhere? Is that the plan?
I think I will do that for email communication.
Okay.
I will not do that for Facebook or Instagram communication.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, this really raises the issue of what are the responsibilities of communication director? What's your understanding of that? My understanding is that what you just mentioned, the email communication is a high priority because in part there's been concern in the past that this committee hasn't responded to input by email, and or other means, but the email account has been sort of inconsistent and apparently inconsistently monitored. So actually, I had a quick word with Duncan Wardwell, assistant town manager, about the possibility of having a richmondbt.gov email address, which some committees do have.
Yeah.
You know, at least, or maybe keep the Gmail address, but have it sort of prominent in the town website as this is how you can. Currently, I think 3 of us have our email addresses listed, but so it would be unclear who one should write to and what would be the outcome of that.
Yeah.
So I guess my proposal is that there be a single email identified as the official email address for this committee, and that there be someone monitoring it and having responsibility for informing the rest of the committee as appropriate, responding to the person sending the email. That would be at least I would think the minimal, or at least a desirable function for this person, this communications director.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is that I like the idea of it not being a Gmail account. One of the limitations with Gmail is that it's 2-factor identification. And currently Nick's cell phone is the other factor. And that's fine. It can be mine, but that just means that every time the email gets passed, we have to go through that. We have to jump through those hoops. Yeah. And because it's Gmail, it's just annoying as opposed to having a town email account that anyone can log into. Yeah. And I think that there is value in having that account being overseen by, say, me, but Chase could jump in there. Yeah. If I say, hey, Chase, like so-and-so had a question about something, I think you could answer it. And I don't have to forward it to him. Then he goes from his email account. Like if we could access it, that would make life easier. And the other thing is that Gmail is like all things in the world, just like throwing advertisements at you. And I don't know how it gets us up, but it's like the email fills up with crap. Yeah. Basically, yeah. The Gmail account does. And so it's fine to like look through it and you see that there's nothing important in there, but it also just feels busy and is sort of anxiety inducing. And you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of like missed things. And you're like, oh, it's just actually a bunch of just like gibberish, like it's like telling you, it's Instagram telling you to like do things, and it's, yeah. it's like, okay.
So I think another benefit is, people will know when they're officially communicating to us, because I don't know about other people, but I get unofficial, like a text or an email from some people, and I have to go back and say, okay, is this one I should share with everybody or whatever? So I think this way people will know if it goes there, it should be shared with the whole committee. And whether we do that instantly or, I don't know how often you check it. We should set up a protocol for when it gets, so you wouldn't just share with Chase, but you would send it to the whole committee. We're not supposed to comment on it.
Yes.
And then, and respond to them saying, thank you very much. I've just forwarded it to the whole committee. And that way everybody will know, and hopefully it'll all be archived there. So we don't even have to, it'll be,
Yeah.
we won't delete them after we
Yeah.
respond. So I love that idea, Ian. That would be great.
Gmail accounts can be set to forward automatically. I know I'm obliged to have a Gmail account, but I just have it so it forwards to the email that I monitor. So that may be a possibility to get around the awkwardness of Gmail, but the alternative is, should I pursue the idea of having an official town?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Yes.
Ian.
I think that would be, that would.
Second.
Clear.
Yeah,
Eh,
motion.
And the other thing I'll do is, the reason why I don't want to do, why I wouldn't share out, and I would not encourage folks to do this, Instagram or Facebook direct message, is that those conversations will just get lost. And so I will encourage people to send me an email that's the way that we continue those threads, and then we can address whatever issue it is. So I'll encourage people to do that, but I don't want to start a thread on Facebook and then have
Right.
all these, yeah.
So if anything is important, Facebook is good for putting out the word about some event, but if people are trying to give feedback, if we're looking for official input, I think that would be great to have an official.
And I have been checking it every few days, so I think that's probably sufficient.
Julian,
So I'm wondering, Cecilia, you mentioned that once we share it to the committee, our communications director can respond back to the person who sent it, said we shared it. That may not always feel to the sender like we're actually responding to what's in there. And I'm wondering if how we can do that. So for example, Nancy sent an email, I don't know if it was last meeting or 2 meetings ago. I think it was last meeting. And I wanted to respond to her, but I wasn't quite sure what the protocol was internally for the committee. And I mean, I wasn't going to speak for the committee, but I was going to say, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We're going to deal with that in our subcommittee. And because of what you said, we realized this was important and we're going to do something. So what are the protocols and how can we respond? How can we be as responsive as possible without breaking any rules or speaking for the group and all that stuff?
right. Yeah, I think that's something we should work out more clearly. It's been a question of who responds when. I was thinking, saying I know people have asked or been concerned that they sent something to the chair or to one person and expected everyone to get it and felt like everybody hadn't gotten. So if we can at least tell them that, it's like a receipt, you sent it, we got it, we shared it. The next step is, okay, what do we do about it? Do we agendize it for a meeting? Do we pass it to the correct subcommittee? Do we have the chair respond? So I think we need a little more thought. I don't know if we want to flesh that out tonight, but maybe put it on a to-do list of, say, let's have a protocol once we have one official email account about how we respond.
Okay.
Because we're not allowed to discuss things as a group
Right.
as a whole, but it's good to know everybody got it. And maybe one person could just say, oh, I'm chair of that subcommittee.
We're going to engage.
This is it, and let the person know, feedback, like we'll put it on the agenda, or good to know something.
At time-wise, we're a little over.
Can I put out a volunteer effort to just, I can come up with a real simple protocol that captures what you just said and share it with Daniel, since he's our communications director. And then bring it to the committee next time.
Yep.
And see if you guys.
Perfect.
Makes sense.
So you're volunteering to come up with a protocol, and we'll agendize it next meeting. Did you get that?
Yeah, and in discussion with Daniel. Was that?
Yep.
correct?
Yes. Okay, good. All right, the next issue, and I don't see any hands from the public, so we'll move on. The next issue is considering a replacement for the chairperson and secretary. So back in August, when Ian and I were approached by Jay Furr, who's the chairman of the select board, to serve as interim co-chairs, we said yes. I unfortunately have a lot on my plate between work and home and other commitments, and said I could only do it until this September meeting. So this will be my last meeting as chair. And we've discussed this arrangement of co-chairing, and we liked it. I mean, we sort of divided as chair and secretary, in part because Ian's much better with the written word and keeping track of it than I am. My emails get lost.
I'm no good at hearing things.
So it was a great it was great from my perspective, because I felt like Ian did most of the work. But moving forward, we're hoping for maybe a more equal co-chairmanship to move that through. And so we discussed it, and I approached Daniel, who is the next oldest member of the committee, not in age, but in longevity on this committee. And has shown, real willingness to lean in, whether it was drafting, editing the management plan, serving now as communications coordinator, working a lot on the RCC. We're hoping maybe the RCC will ease up, and I don't know if you want to take chairmanship and communications director. There's some ways that works together, other ways it's added work. But I don't want to speak on your behalf, but Daniel said he would consider it if he was actually a co-chair with someone like Ian, who is willing to continue to serve. Do either of you want to add anything to that?
Well, just very briefly, my understanding is that we two are interim co-chairs based on an appointment by the select board. So time's up for both of us. And the secretary is identified in the bylaws as a separate individual. The duties of that person is maybe not well defined, other than perhaps that the person who takes minutes, but in the past, and I hope in the future, we'll treat that as a shared responsibility. Not so the secretary position is really poorly defined, but it does exist in the bylaws.
And there is precedent. I believe the Trails Committee has co-chairs, right?
They do.
Yeah, and there is precedent, and the select board is fine with a co-chair idea, even if it isn't explicitly described in our bylaws. It's not prohibited, yeah. And I agree that if we take turns taking notes, that's a good way to spread some of the labor. Do you want to say anything, Daniel? Is this a position you'd be willing to accept? Should we vote you in?
Yeah, so I very much do not want to do the chair by myself. I think that both from a sort of a work perspective, because it is more work, and I do also serve on other committees and I do a lot of civic engagement. So I feel like all those things are really important to me. So I don't want to like shortchange any of the other things. But I do think that being a co-chair is something that like I could do. And also I think that I saw Jesse and Nick to some degree sort of manage the challenges of going through this process by themselves. They have the committee support, but it's different when you have a sort of a co-chair to be like help navigate through some of the challenges. So that feels more appealing to me than sort of doing it in isolation. So I would be excited to do it as a co-chair. And then I would probably, I don't think this needs to be a part of it, but I would probably put a limit on the time that I would do it for. So not an indefinite co-chair for until I'm 80, but for a
Andrew's years.
in Andrew's years, yeah. For a length of time, I would be happy to serve in that position and also work with if it's Ian as the co-chair, if Ian decides to continue to do that, or any one of the other committee members who I think bring a lot to this committee. So.
Right.
Hooray. Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. It was actually really nice to know there was an end date of when I was no longer co-chair, and that included all of two and a half meetings. So it's maybe something we want to consider annually.
Yeah, it would be.
And just like pick 1 month every year, we revisit it. And obviously there'll be shifting in between times necessary.
Well, I wonder if we should do annually, but offset terms for the co-chairs, so we're not doing a wholesale switch every time. In other words, if one of you were willing to stay on for 6 months and the other stayed on for a year, then we could sort of have
Right.
overlapping terms, so to speak.
Yeah.
And maybe we could start that in a year.
Yeah.
When we've got our footing with new members, and then one person would go an additional 6 months with a new chairperson.
I love it.
So
Yeah. Okay. These are all good things.
Does this require a motion?
Yes, but we should wait for Melissa to come back.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure.
do you know the process for you going from interim if you choose to not be an interim anymore? Or do we know the process for that?
We would vote. We would vote on both of you, and
Okay.
and it would go
Yeah.
to, it has to pass by 2/3 or 5 of our committee. And then that would go to the select board as our recommendation, the
Okay.
select board.
Well, so it seems we have a nomination for one of two co-chairs. And this position of secretary, although it's in the bylaws, we're not sure that it's a priority for us, but it is a priority in that case too. If we have one nomination for co-chair, we should have a second nomination, a second person for the other co-chair.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And Ian said he is willing to, and I would nominate you if I'm as chair. I'm not exactly sure. I think I can. And you're willing to serve, right?
Yes, and I think, as I said, or maybe as I've said privately, the ability to to serve the committee by doing some of the sort of administrative things appeals to me. So it actually raises in my mind the question: do I want to be secretary, or do I want to be co-chair, or on either at the pleasure of the other members of the committee? And I guess I've really enjoyed being able to do a lot of hard work and I hope makes progress for the committee as co-chair. So I think I prefer that if we're willing to let the secretary position float, or if somebody else would be interested in taking that and identify what the responsibility would be.
Okay. So we have 2 people who are willing to be co-chairs.
Mhm.
And this would
Thank you.
also start that process of having someone who served doing that work with another person who will be
Who
new
has
to
a
that
lot
position.
more experience of the history of.
Well, yeah. So that would be great. And we talked about how to vote in terms of numbers. And we can't, normally I would say, oh, let's put them together as a slate, the co-chairs. But if you recuse themselves, then we won't have 5 votes.
Mm.
So I think we should vote on each one independently. And when Melissa gets back, go ahead, Julie.
Are you staying on, or are you done with the committee? I know you're stepping away from chair.
Right, I had actually planned to step away from the committee entirely, but I will wait to see if we can get more members before I do that, so we can keep up quorum.
Thanks.
I also wanted to kind of see this through. I hated the idea of leaving, but I haven't been able to put in as much time
Yeah.
as a co-chair should. And I think there's lots of benefits to the co-chair model. A lot of it early on, when I did have time in the summer, we communicated a lot. We were, CC'd on each memo with other people, and then we could confer. And I think it makes it a lot easier. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Do you have to leave?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We need your vote.
Yeah, so just to sum up,
You're voting on.
both, yeah, so do you need a moment? Okay, so we were
You really need
discussing,
to know what you're voting on?
I will know.
we were discussing that both Daniel and Ian were willing to serve as co-chairs. They have a lot of strengths that they bring to this.
They certainly do.
And we need to vote on them separately so that we can, if they recuse themselves, then there's 5 votes for each one, and we can forward
Gotcha.
them to the select board as as the ones we choose, and then they will appoint them.
Do they have to recuse themselves? Is that in the bylaws?
They do, because we need 5 to
Well,
vote.
I don't know if they have to recuse themselves, but if they choose to,
Or abstain.
or abstain or something.
Yeah.
But if you run for public office, people vote for themselves all the time.
Yeah,
That's true. So yeah, vote for yourself.
So we could do it that way, but
Well, I would.
Well, just look like we have huge heads.
If people would prefer, if other members of the committee would prefer that we step out,
No,
Yeah.
no.
further discussion or a vote. Okay.
Let's just do this thing.
all right. Okay. So do I have a motion for one of these 2 gentlemen to be co-chair?
Yeah, motion for Daniel Schmidt to be co-chair.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Second motion.
Motion for Ian Stokes to be co-chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposing. I didn't even ask for abstentions. So it passes with
Yeah.
5 votes for each, and we'll forward that to the select board.
Thanks.
Stokes Schmidt era begins.
Yeah. You can start right now with this meeting.
Yeah.
But you haven't been approved by the select board yet, so I'll continue.
All right, that's our time.
Okay.
Perfect.
6:45. Applications to join the ACFC, including any recommendations from RCC and TC.
But you had asked us to note if Wright showed up, and Wright is there.
Right is there. Thank you. Hi, Right.
Good evening.
We mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that you had offered to help talk about easements with neighbors as well as with Velco. Melissa, who is on this board, had offered to take that over from Caitlin. She's been heavily involved with the management plan rewrite. And given your experience in this, I was suggesting at the last meeting that you would be a great person. I also want to help in my closing part of the meeting, encouraging people who are not sitting on the ACFC committee to help with some of the tasks of this committee. And it was your, having been on earlier committees, very knowledgeable about the ACFC as well as these issues. So first I wanted to thank you for offering, and we didn't vote on it at the last meeting. I didn't know that it needed to be a voted thing because we were just in the past volunteering to take over different tasks. But we wanted to highlight it at this meeting, and I'm open to discussion of anyone on the committee. But do you want to say a couple of words first, right, about what you might be helping the committee with?
Sure. So as an adjoining landowner, I've worked over probably 20 years with Vermont Electric Co-op on utility easements on our property. And I'm familiar with the utility easements on the Andrews Community Forest. And there are 2 side-by-side easements that are very important to the utilities and are part of the landscape there, and they are easements that the utilities have great power overseeing. And I'm happy to negotiate or work with them as they look to survey, as I understand it, a specific easement to get from Route 2 to their utility easements. And I'm also willing, I know the Hennessy's at Maple Wind, and my thought that I mentioned to a couple of you was Maple Wind Farm, as the landowner to the east of Andrews, has a vehicular right-of-way on our eastern boundary, starting at the old Andrews homestead. And it's a road that's in very poor condition. And when it gets used, it gets ruined. And my thought was to visit with Bruce and Beth to see if they would swap easements and use the utility access road up to the power line, and then go back on to the easemented road that they have that goes to their meadows. And then we would extinguish the easement, the old farm road for until it gets to the power lines. And it would strictly be a trail at that point, which is the best use for it. And I don't have the direction. I didn't feel I could visit with Ruth and Beth without visiting with you folks first. I think it's a win-win for the committee, and it's a win for the Hennessy's, because it's a road that the utility will maintain, or the Andrews Community Forest Committee will maintain, and the Hennessy's will get the benefit of it. And they're probably already using it now if cattle are outside of their fencing. So that was my thought, and happy to volunteer to assist and work with the committee on this matter, with or without a committee member, but keep you all apprised, or keep the co-chairs apprised of my involvement on these two matters. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Yep, thanks.
Any comments or questions from the committee?
That's in line with what we had discussed as our hope for a reroute for Maplewind. Anyway, I think what you described is exactly what we had hoped we could achieve. So
So the major not sticking point, but the major issue would be whether Velco would approve of Maplewind also using their road as an easement. Is that?
Right, or I don't know if we need to make a new easement for them on that road. I mean, that would be something that Ray could sit down and discuss with the Hennessy's, whether they felt like they needed an easement to that, because it's kind of separate parcel.
Right, because Velco could come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, Hennessy's, we're closing the road for 2 weeks while we work on the line. Nobody but our vehicles could be on the road.
Right. Well, that would be something that Wright would discuss with both, which is the benefit of him dealing with both. And with the town right now, sort of negotiating that permanent easement, they're going to pay for an easement, the Velco, to the town for permanent access a little bit further up the hill towards those towers they're replacing.
I guess I just wonder if there's any language in the Velco easement that would prohibit us from letting someone piggyback.
That's what Wright would figure
That's
out
what he
for it.
would.
Yeah.
Well, I think two things. It's clear that a committee such as ours can call on others, as I think identified as consultants, who can work on represent us and work on our behalf. And Wright is in particularly especially good position to do that, partly because of his knowledge of these neighbors and interested parties. Also, of course, having served on this committee, so he knows the committee and knows the Andrews Forest. So I think the offer is really appreciated. And so secondly, I guess, to be formal about this, should this committee just sort of officially authorize Wright Preston to work on our behalf, communicating with the people that he's mentioned. And I think recognizing that Melissa actually wants to continue with her responsibility of being the contact person for Velcro, if Melissa wants to be continuing as our representative with Velcro, I think is your
Right, I didn't know, I mean, if Wright would like to take it over permanently, I feel like we should probably have a committee member that is still a contact as well.
Right.
Those are sort of two different.
That's fine.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I agree. I think it'd be good for us to vote on that. So it's clear to the select board, clear to Velco, clear to the Hennessy's that Wright is working on our behalf. The question is, we had sort of separated that position from the chairmanship just to unload things from the chair. But now if we're unloading to Wright, should Wright be working directly with the co-chairs? Or Melissa, would you like to continue to, because I don't know that we need now another person.
No, that's fine. Just work directly with the coaches.
If that's okay with the future co-chairs.
Yeah, that's fine.
So he would, okay.
So then a motion to authorize Wright Preston to work on our behalf.
Yeah, are you making that motion? Or we can't, we're co-chairs.
Sure. If we're ready for motion.
Julian
yes.
will make a
I
motion.
move
The right person to
to
work on our
authorize.
behalf.
Yeah.
With,
Wait,
with-
Julian's gonna make the motion,
oh, okay.
because we're chairs.
Oh, okay.
I move to authorize rights to dialogue and negotiate on our behalf with the owners of Maplewind and Velco to work for this switch on the easements that seems like makes a lot of sense for everybody.
And to connect with the Velco about their permanent easement that they're purchasing from the town,
Yes.
and sort of represent the Andrews Community Forest.
Should I start at the top? Should we make that a little simpler?
I don't know, it depends on how much Daniel got.
Say it again, Julian.
There we
Say
go.
it
Okay.
again.
I move that rights be enabled to speak on behalf of the Andrews Forest Committee for all things easements related to Velco and Maple Wind Farm.
So I wouldn't say speak on behalf of
Okay.
necessarily, that makes it sound like he's the sole decision maker,
Okay.
but that he work with them
Okay.
and be in contact with the chairs, because there may be some things we might have to vote on, who knows?
Right. All right, let's try it again then.
May I suggest a friendly amendment?
Yes, please.
Can you add Green Mountain Power in as well? Because they share, they are the easement holder next to Vermont Electric Power Company. So there's two separate east-west easements.
Okay.
Melissa, did you have?
Paul
something?
has his hand up as well.
Okay, Paul, would this affect our motion?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just concerned that, you're basically hiring an agent to negotiate for you. I think it makes sense to have a committee member present when or on the phone or conferenced in when those discussions take place. It just seems odd that there's some type of negotiation happening without a committee member there in the room.
I hear that, and I think that's why we're struggling with the name of this motion. And I think maybe what we're after is for authorizing right to engage in dialogue that would then end in a proposal that would be brought forth to the committee that the committee would discuss. Right?
Exactly,
Is that what
yeah.
we're doing?
Yeah, I don't know, Paul, that we need to have a committee member in the room at the time, but I agree, it's not like right would be superseding our decision-making power. It's what you just explained, Julian, would be the way to phrase it.
Going to be gathering information.
That makes sense. That kind of clears my concern over what you just said.
Yeah,
As long as the decisions aren't being made without you folks being.
That's right. That's right.
No,
I don't
no.
think we abdicate that anyway.
No.
and the select board has ultimately responsibility, but that we're authorizing right to speak on our behalf with Velco, Green Mountain Power, and Maple Wind regarding easements related to the Andrews Community Forest, and to work with the co-chairs to bring whatever information is needed to the full committee.
Is Daniel comfortable with having that in the record?
Motion to authorize Wright Preston to work with Maple Wind Farm, Green Mountain Power, and Vermont Electric Power Company on the existing easement through the Andrews Community Forest, and to bring information back to the Andrews Community Forest Committee for the final decision in regards to the easement.
Who seconds that? Who seconds it?
Second.
All right, Melissa seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. All right.
Experience any adverse effects within 48 hours medical help.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on. We're almost still sort of on time. Subcommittee reports in the past. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Applications to join the ACFC, including recommendations from the Conservation Commission and Trails Committee. My understanding is, and you guys can correct me, that neither the Conservation Commission nor the Trails Committee are forwarding any applications to us at this time. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes, you are correct. Sorry.
yeah. Judy came into the Trails Committee meeting and said Conservation Committee had reached out to 15 people and asked if they would join and did not get a single.
Oh,
Ouch.
And we
I-
had someone who came and expressed, two people expressed interest actually, and neither ended up applying.
Okay, I reached out to just maybe 3 or 4 people and no one applied, but I didn't really twist any arms. What about trails?
We have not had any, I did clarify to them that a Trails Committee member could join as a non-Trails representative.
Right.
Or appoint
Yeah.
appointee representative, yeah. And we discussed, but didn't get.
Okay. So it seems like we'll have to do more outreach. So we were trying to follow the plan, you know, being criticized for picking our friends or something in the past. We tried to just sort of have the town put out a request and a couple times, and it was extended once in Front Porch Forum. And then I think as individuals, we tried to mention it to people, encouraging both through the committees and as individuals. And we have one applicant, but he did not come through as either of the two. So he would be considered as one of the ad hoc positions that we can talk about tonight. But I just wanted to clarify. So is there anything we should do to make it to encourage people to apply now that you guys have tried? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, because the RCC had a pretty big discussion about this, because I actually think that we had what we thought were really a couple of folks who were really interested, and got a lot of feedback from people who we reached out to who said that they weren't comfortable or they didn't want to apply. And a couple things that people said, and I might miss some of them, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but one was that it seemed like a lot of work. People said, oh, it seems like that committee just like is working all the time, and I want to like come to the meetings, but I don't want to do like hours and hours of work outside of the meetings. Fair enough.
Sounds like my students sometimes.
Yeah. Just want to get my A and go home. They said that, you know, it felt contentious and it didn't feel like like an issue they wanted to jump into. Yeah. And yeah, so those are like kind of the two main ones. But I was surprised about the work. Look, I didn't know that there was the perception, but that was actually quite common for people to say that. I didn't know there was a perception of like, oh, that committee seems like a lot more work than other committees. So I can dig through from the meeting notes and just see if there's anything else, but I'll pass the mic.
Okay. While you do that, is there anything from Trails regarding comments on why more people might not want to, or what we should do to encourage people to join?
No, I think the feedback that I get from them is the interactions with the select board have left a really bad taste in people's mouths. And people say, oh, I'm fine interacting with the community and negotiating, but when the select board makes statements that don't support the committee, not interested. That's come up a few times.
Maybe we need more snacks.
Jean Bresser makes chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's doing.
So
Jean in this committee?
go ahead.
She is someone I would like to ask.
Who's that?
Jean Bresser as a Trails Committee member.
Oh,
And really avid walker, but also someone that knows a lot of people in town, and I feel like could be perceived as not partial in anything. And so I will approach her.
Okay, thank you.
Two things then. I think the next but one item on the agenda is recruiting somebody to help us with management plan. And if that comes to fruition, I think we'll be able to show people that this committee is handling the workload, and that committee members will be able to, be more productive and at the time that they are able to commit. That's my expectation as well as my hope. The other thing is on this item, I think, are we taking any action for the application that did come in? Are we tabling it or?
I was going to get to that next.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just starting out with what the subcommittees came in with. Yeah, I think I've heard the concern that it's a lot of work, and I also heard that, well, if we make it clear that we're bringing in other people to do what used to take a lot of work among committee members in terms of drafting material up and redrafting it according to input, that maybe it won't seem as hard. There's been so much interest in the forest. The first time we made the committee after the interim committee, there was a lot of applicants. And at that time, the select board was like, whoa, we've never seen so many applicants for a committee. A lot of committees are short members at times. So, and we get lots of people showing up at public meetings. So it's sort of how to make people feel more comfortable with both the work and the climate, and realize that this would be a real service to the community moving forward. And I take part of it myself, because normally I think as chair, one of the co-chairs, I would be reaching out to more people, but this was just at the start of my semester, and I was pretty swamped and did not get to reach out and do that. So maybe we need a an outreach plan going forward. I do want to mention the one applicant that did respond and filled out the form. So the way to do it is to fill out the form for all the Richmond town committees, which isn't that informative.
No.
It just is basically, are you a committee member? Can you serve the whole time? Are you not a committee member? Are you a Richmond resident? Can you serve the whole time? What other committees have you served on? Kind of thing. We had one applicant. Typically there's a letter that goes with it describing their intent and background. Sometimes people sent us a CV and other things like that. The person did send a sort of infographic kind of thing, but it didn't really, for me, it didn't really, it wasn't expressing knowledge about necessarily the Andrews Committee and what's involved in the job and why they want to participate. It was more or less sort of like, this is who I am and what I'm interested in. So I'm all about alternative formats, but it didn't have the kind of information that that I would need to be able to vote on that person. So what I was going to do was recommend we go back to that person and say, can you write us a letter about what your intention and interest is? So my recommendation would be to table considering that or voting on that until we reach back out to that person and figure out what, get more information. I also think it came in, like you said, a day after the deadline.
No, well, it arrived on the extended deadline date.
Oh, then that would be fine.
But then was
Okay.
forwarded to the three committees, the commission and the two committees.
Okay.
The day after 9/11, which was a holiday. So there was a little bit of a delay. The result was that it didn't get to the Conservation Commission in time for
Or the Trails Committee
this tight.
to consider.
schedule.
Yeah. And unless, does anybody have any comment? Would they like to talk about that application more? Or
No, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it does seem worth answering the questions that he forwarded to Duncan. Did you see?
I didn't.
He had some pretty thoughtful questions. I can read them. I haven't pulled up.
Sure,
here.
I didn't see that. I just saw the infographic in the application.
Yeah, and it tells a little more about him as an applicant. Hi, Duncan, Zach here, just following up on my application for the Andrews Town Forest Committee vacancies. I have a couple of questions regarding the current efforts of the committee. How much conversation is currently being held around trail use, expansion, and general access for mountain biking, cross-country skiing, hiking, and walking? That's one question. Next question, is this a series of topics that are currently being stonewalled and unlikely to be resolved? Another question, if not, what current progress is being made? If this is not much of a conversation currently, how much of a priority or how open to discussion is the committee with specific regard to mountain biking? What outside parties are involved in this particular area of discussion, if it is currently on the table? I know this is quite a lot, and I take no offense if that is too much to answer. With that said, recreation and land development with recreation in mind are two of my top interests. This could put me in or out of favor for the seat, surely, but I'd rather be upfront now than have this be a surprise in the future. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Zach.
Oh, great. I didn't realize it was a letter.
Actually, I Duncan, it was directed to Duncan and he sent it to I received it from him. And I didn't really want to go into details of responding. I wrote back to Duncan and suggested referring this applicant to the minutes of this committee, that, you know, I feel the answers to the questions are at least indirectly answered, available in the minutes. So I wrote to Duncan and said, send this link because it has the minutes of this.
Okay. I think I actually might have read your response. I bet I was CC'd. I bet he sent it to both of us because that's starting to sound familiar. I was just going back to the materials for the meeting and realizing I didn't see one there. Yeah, so that's my fault if I missed that first email.
I would advocate for giving a thoughtful, doesn't have to be long, but a response to the question if we have one person who's interested in joining us.
Yeah, what I think, well, thank you for bringing that up. So instead of just tabling him, I think we should table it, not vote on it yet because we didn't respond to him and he's not here tonight, but maybe we could give him a response. I don't know if the Trails Committee or the Conservation Committee wants to look at his application or whether we just want to consider him for the ad hoc spot because there's 3 spots open.
Yeah.
But give him some feedback and then invite him to the next meeting of either of the 3 of our groups.
Yeah.
Is it okay to, one way we could do that is to email him and ask him to, we were talking about putting in a letter.
Right.
And then saying in that email, one of the co-chairs, and I'd be happy to do this, if you wanted to have a conversation about your questions, like Daniel will be happy to talk on the phone or whatever about that. I think that those questions would be a much easier conversation than an email.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to do that. And I wonder if we can just send out that to him and then move forward that way. Does that work?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
to answer those questions in an email, I feel like they're very broad.
yeah, and they're kind of long. And
Yeah.
that's probably why you referred them to the minutes because they're central to what everything we've been talking about the past 2 years.
Yeah, pertinent questions.
So yeah, if you don't mind, if you're taking that on as your new co-chair responsibilities.
Yeah, I can follow up. I'm just curious if anyone has the documentation of what do we have any verbiage on what a letter would entail? Because I remember when I applied for like the RCC, they said like, could you please submit like a letter with explaining blah, blah, blah. Do we have that language anywhere?
I don't know. So that was my thought also when I saw that, when I thought there wasn't one, was to ask Duncan if we can at least include something that says we want a letter that describes your interest and background.
When he does in the application, there are some basic questions.
Yeah, the very last line,
What was the last one there?
if you're applying, this one, if you're applying for a new term, then please introduce yourself to the select board by providing a short cover letter detailing your background, training, and experience with the board, commission, or committee that you're applying for, or resume.
Okay, so that's okay, interesting. So maybe I could ask him to just provide more information on his interest in the committee. I think that's what we're asking for, is like less of the we can see his like infographic, but it doesn't speak to necessarily like what about the committee he's.
But I gotta say his email,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. If I were him, I'd say, well, it's in my email that I sent. So maybe it's just a matter of putting that.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, it didn't have his background, or it didn't have all the things. I like that. That's what I was looking for. I wrote a letter like that when I first applied to a committee here to be considered, and the select board will want to see that.
Right.
So I think we should get back to him and maybe if you're willing to address some of his questions and then say, if you're still interested, we will also need this letter specified at the end,
Right.
both for the committee to consider and the select board.
Well, it's really interesting. It felt kind of like a generational thing to me. Like, I was like, wow, I would have never thought of sending something like that. But
Yeah.
And I mean, I realized after clicking on some of the links in there, I'm sure if you're an artist, career artist in a graphic artist, that's probably much more of a norm. Where he's a photographer,
right.
and so having a bio,
Right.
and he also is in the like testing products and things like that. So
Interesting.
Okay, so I think we have a decision. I don't think we need to vote on that, but we have a plan for outreach to him, solicit a letter if he's still interested. What we don't have is a plan. I guess we need to go back to Duncan and have him reopen it for another 2 weeks. And then we have to maybe write a letter to Front Porch Forum or something, or a little announcement saying we're still looking for people, and, you know, maybe mention that we'll be hiring people to do drafting this report and revising it. So we would like people who want to engage on it. I don't know. Does anybody have thoughts on what we need to get more applicants in the future?
I mean, I'm curious how many people here, like how many people people on this committee directly reached out to. Because I do think that we could probably post ad nauseum on Front Porch Forum, and it's not going to do anything. And it's going to be about so-and-so talked to me and I thought about it. And then I thought, okay, I want to do that. I think that that's going to be our best bet. So I just,
Good for me.
yeah.
I wish I could too.
Like I said, I
thought
did.
we were like solid people.
Well, I did 4 and they weren't all solid. Like one person was like, I heard about that, but I hadn't really considered it. And I didn't really. And there's a couple of people I thought it'd be great if they were on the committee, if we could, you know, sort of press them into it.
So I guess,
A little more, like make it feel them more welcome or something.
yeah.
We could have a meet and greet and a potluck. And if you're interested, come to this potluck and we'll talk about it. I don't know.
I guess my question would be, do the committee members, do we all feel like we could make another push to reach out to our networks? Have we exhausted them, or do you think we could do it again and say, all right, we're gonna reach out to folks? And it doesn't have to be one-on-one, but it could be like, we're part of Mansfield Nordic, and we could put out we could ask folks that we know from that. You know, there's other ways to do it too, not just like reaching out to your friends, but
right, people that are connected to outdoors.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I could think of plenty of neighbors and folks maybe just haven't thought about it.
Right. Yeah, some people haven't. Might be a nice start for people to join town committees. They might think it's more challenging than it is. All right, so we still need to open up the document though and tell Duncan that, you know, and set a deadline by which to apply. So I don't know if we need to hash out the exact thing now, but I'm thinking another at least a 2-week window and repost it to Front Porch Forum, because they'll need a place to apply to.
Why wouldn't it be open until filled?
Well, sometimes if you don't have a deadline, people won't submit. And the other thing is, in order for each of our committees to review them. So
Right.
the Conservation Commission, the Trails Committee, and this committee will need to need time to get it to look at before meeting, because you guys, your 2 committees will have to vote on it before we can vote on it,
Right.
or at least review it.
So that pretty much set the time frame. Last time around, we tried to get a deadline prior to the 2 commits to the commission and the committee. So that would sort of give us, it means it's a monthly
Yeah.
schedule, basically.
So Ian was really thoughtful about that last time. Can I just delegate that to you, working with Daniel to figure out, to connect with Duncan and figure out the next deadline, being as generous as possible?
Yeah.
Because we're running
Right.
behind schedule right now.
Yeah, we're running about 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
So 25.
What if we call it a sale? And just tell people that it's a one-time sale to join the committee. 40%.
Discount.
Yeah, end of season sale.
Yeah, good idea.
Or you get a free something free.
Yeah, I was
gift if you
gonna say,
join.
put your name in a raffle and
Get a child.
Win a
Or I can
free-
start- I can start making cookies.
Everything must go.
But something to make it sound fun, would be great. So, okay, well, if it's okay, I'd like to move on.
Yep.
All right. Subcommittee reports in packets. We're not going to have a lot of time to talk about them in depth. Maybe just a status report from each one. We'll still have to figure out when we'll put it out for full public comment, what we're turning over to a hired writer. But real quickly, if each of you, Melissa and Chase, want to give a quick update on where things are and address the question in whether you want an additional person on these subcommittees, in particular for you, Chase. And I think you had a meeting with Tyler that's worth reporting on.
Very much.
Yeah. So maybe really quickly the Trails Committee, and then we'll pass it over to Melissa. Or Trail Stewardship Plan.
Yeah, I'm gonna revise, and thanks for the comments from the other subcommittee. They were really helpful. I feel good about where this is at. There's a couple things that have come up since I adjusted that I'd like to put in, and one would be confirming if there was a maintenance commitment from one of the other trail groups, like if RMT was gonna commit to maintaining trails there, and that was a fit, is something that could be written in there. Also, Tyler brought up snow grooming as mostly just asking at the Trails Committee. I mean, I forgot to mention this, apologies.
Which Tyler, Merritt?
Merritt
Mhm.
said, is Andrews okay with using the same trail grooming pattern that has happened the last couple of years? He just wanted to check.
What do they use now?
I have the map. I have it here. I can.
Is it stuff like power lines and below, or is it above?
Yeah, it's all below power lines.
And this is for cross-country skiing?
It's a trail compressor. It compresses snow, so they only do it when there's a significant amount of snow. It's not as wide as you could.
Was it 18 inches maybe the width?
Yeah, so you could fat bike, snowshoe,
Cross-country skiing.
cross-country skiing down it would be. It's a little narrow, right? But cross-country skiing up
Skin
works.
Mhm.
And it joins VYCC, and so
And did they do that on VYCC?
yeah. So they just wanted to make sure that they're okay to continue that same thing, but that's something that I would like to add to the stewardship plan as well.
Okay.
Winter.
Yeah, why don't you put it in the stewardship plan and let's agendize it for the next meeting? That way we can get feedback from the public if they see it on the agenda and.
Okay, and I will follow up with Trails and RMT and solidify what that proposal for maintenance is.
Yeah, and again, if you have a conversation with them, ask them if we can do this as a collaborative effort, invite other community members in, because I really see the potential for
Will do, yeah,
community building around the trails rather than conflict.
definitely.
I think, if I'm reading it right, that the lower trails below the power lines are the ones that we are talking about having the least amount of restrictions on. So in theory, there wouldn't be a problem with continuing what we're talking about. We haven't finalized that yet, but I mean, I think that's where we're headed at the moment.
Yeah. And when we see it all together, and I can't remember if I sent you my comments, but if I didn't, I will send them to you.
Okay.
I have to put that on my to-do list.
I think you started the comments.
No, but I didn't know if I sent the written one.
Oh, shoot. You might have. I ended up just going little comments in the doc.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right.
All right.
Oh,
Well, I'll just
Sorry,
send them to
Cecilia.
you in some way that works for you.
Okay. It's a short enough doc. You can send whatever you wrote and I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. I think we should move on. Unfortunately, Daniel's not here, but there's a big piece with the Tyler meeting. So if you want to do that.
Sure.
But wait a minute, do we need more people on the Chase's committee?
Oh, sorry, that's right. Do you want another person on the stewardship trails piece, or are you good?
I think I'm all right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Ian,
Well, I've had a thought, which is I think if the quorum is 5, then we can have a subcommittee of 4 people.
Mhm.
4 is less. Right now we have one of 3 and one of actually 1 at this point. So should we consider combining the 2 committees based on, the preliminary work has been done, some overlaps have been identified. Would it be more efficient to combine the 2? I don't know, but this is the right time to suggest that. Maybe keep it in mind till we've both committees, but I guess that raises a thought related to should the committees stay separate and stewardship recruit another member, or should we fold them together? What does Chase think about that?
Yeah, the way I had imagined it was that we'd bring our work to one of the meetings and look at overlap all together and make the final decisions of whether something belongs in one or the other at that point. And kind of wrap that into the final edit. Which we're going to need to do anyway, right? We're going to look over it once. So
yeah. So I was also thinking that pretty soon we're going to have that conversation and then hand it off hopefully to a writer. So the question is, is there what do we want to hold the combining question until we hear what's going on in your committee, and then we might have a better sense of whether this is the time to combine them? Is that okay?
sure.
Melissa, you're back up.
Okay. Our subcommittee has been meeting a lot. We've been meeting every Friday for a couple of hours. And I'm just going to report mostly on, since we're short on time, the meeting with Tyler Mesha that we had last week. There was a lot. He is going to come to.
Do you want to just say for everybody what his
I'm
position is?
Sorry. He is a zoning administrator. Is that the correct title?
The Tyler chair is zoning
For town of Richmond.
for the town.
Yeah. So he provided us with a lot of information. He is going to come to a meeting in the future. So I'm just throwing out the big concepts right now really quickly so that you have a preview of what's coming. This would have been really helpful information to have had a long time ago, but so here it is. Everything is going to need a zoning permit as far as trails that will be built. So every trail that will be built in the future needs a zoning permit. If the trail traverses a slope that is greater than 20%, which a lot of our trails do from a preliminary kind of exploration, then those trails will be required to have engineered plans, professional engineered plans that include erosion control. Not sure if I'm missing anything else under that, but at least erosion control and professionally engineered plans. If there are any trails in our plans that go over 35% slope, then those are prohibited and we'll need to make alternative arrangements. So we don't think we have any over 35, but that
there are 20.
There are plenty over 20. So that was sort of the big piece of information.
Is there any precedent for a trail needing a zoning permit?
We don't know. We didn't get into that. We're just kind of taking it as we're being told by I'm just presenting what we found out. I don't know about that.
Did he talk about the process for that and the criteria for awarding them?
I'm going to finish up on the slope thing for just a second. There was a question about, what if the trail is switched back? Does it matter? It doesn't matter. This regulation is based on the slope of the actual land, not the design of the trail. So there's that piece of information. What he would like us to do is to have a professionally done site plan. I'm not really super familiar with site plans, but the site plan would be done by an engineer or a land surveyor, and must include all town regulations that apply. And it would show all existing skid roads, logging roads, the vast trail, existing hiking trails, farm roads, current connections to other properties, the landowners of all abutting properties, things like wells, deer wintering areas, ecologically sensitive areas, existing features, and deed restrictions, and will be done in conjunction with the conservation easement, of course, and BLT. So
we have most of that. It
we do
sounds
have
like we
most of that. I don't think,
Somebody would have to like
I think
layer it
it's just putting
appropriately.
it all into kind of his site plan format. But so it's another thing that needs to be done. The other thing that he reiterated to us in his second email is that he requires the trails to be done in trail building to be done in phases. So he wants to see the work broken out into phases. He might allow some phases to be run concurrently, but wants things in phases, wants building done in phases.
And did he say the rationale or the authority by which, like, do people build their houses like in phases?
It sounds like he holds the authority over that. I didn't hear a lot on the rationale for that. That's why I think he should come and really explain himself some
Yeah,
more.
He offered to call in, but obviously hasn't.
He didn't call in tonight, but I think we need to have him come and have a time slot on the meeting, because this is kind of a lot.
Is he a full-time employee of the
As
city
far as I know,
or town?
yes.
And would he be able to help prepare this? I mean, this is.
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
town
thinking.
Doing it for the
Yes.
town.
I think so. It sounds like he's expecting us to get someone to professionally prepare the site plan.
That's my understanding, and this is unprecedented, I think.
And my very initial toe dip into this is that a site plan of this magnitude would be extremely expensive. So,
How did you dip your toe? Where did you dip your toe?
I dipped my toe into my husband's building and property management, extensive family business. And they said site plan, very expensive. So that was my pinky toe dipping into that, like, oh, how expensive is a site plan? Extremely. So.
We should find out from him what difference the site plan is that he's imagining and what we already have from
Right.
Applewood and City Lawson.
Right.
As you mentioned, that's a lot that we already have on that stuff.
It
so-
sounded like to me, one of the major features of that would be showing slope gradients.
Mhm.
Which we also have, I think.
Yeah, so for the entire, sounds like for the entire slope of where anything will be built.
Is all of this triggered by trails being considered development?
Yeah.
The trail building is considered development. He set us on that. Even hand building trails is considered development. So even if we don't put any bridges, anything like that, we're out there having trails built by hand, that is development in his eyes. So.
Do any of the other trails built on any of the other land in town went through this process and got site plans?
I'm sure not.
No. So, no,
Let's
Don't want to get them in trouble, but
but they should in the future. So it sounds like they did not in his
did
eyes
something
follow.
change? Does this have anything to do with the forest fragmentation
Private land too.
law that passed?
No, you wouldn't have to do that.
No, he said on private land, technically, no, like, that was my understanding, because we asked about private land. It was like, wow, this is a lot. He said, no. But.
Well, no, I remember asking him, I said, so if we need a professionally drawn up site plan, is this just because this is town-owned land, or would it apply
right,
to
you're right,
private
yeah.
land? And the answer, as I remember, was yes, it would apply to any
Yes.
trail building.
Yes,
Um,
that's true. He
yeah.
did say that, but people don't usually bring it up
Oh,
to the town. They
yeah,
just do
I
it
mean,
on the private.
So
land.
this, it would be
I
unprecedented, and it's based on his interpretation of the zoning regulations, and apparently previous zoning administrators haven't picked up on it. No, haven't been asked the question, and therefore haven't answered it in the way that he
I
answered.
don't know, and it seems like he has the backing of Keith Oborn, who we talked with.
Yeah.
Keith Oborn is the person that
He's deferred.
deferred to
Yeah.
pilot.
Yeah.
So,
I think though, I mean, I think what, I missed that conversation, but what I think I'm realizing is that, yeah, it would be great to have Tyler come here and answer all these
Yeah,
questions
I
directly, because there's a lot of questions I think. that we-
Yeah.
So, for me, I think just the really big picture, I'm zooming out on this, is that going forward with the comprehensive management plan and the trail stewardship plan, is that this maybe, we need to think hard about where this falls in the timeline.
Yeah.
Because if we go down a road and, let's just say we do some more public comment or input, and then we go to Tyler and he's like, oh, hang on, wait a
Right.
second. No, this isn't going to fly here. This is
Yeah.
all going to have to be rerouted here.
Yeah.
Then we've really shot ourselves in the foot as far as time.
And my understanding is that the zoning approval process will involve a public notification and input itself,
And
right?
it also may most likely involve a trip to the DRB. So that was also a part that I wanted to mention.
I wonder, and are these Richmond zoning
That's
laws
correct.
or state?
Richmond zoning regulations. is my
So
understanding.
going to another town and asking them how they handled it wouldn't answer the question.
It sounds like Tyler is going to be our major resource for this, just from,
Well, he can't be the resource and the decision maker and
Okay.
all, I mean,
Well-
there must be rules that he did not make that he's interpreting, that we
Right.
just might need
right,
another
before his tenure,
interpretation.
that's right.
Like
That's
the
right.
Regional Planning Commission is the thing I'm thinking of, they must, they give guidance to all the little towns.
So, yeah, so I guess I have two thoughts. One is just quickly, like, I'm curious how, like, the logging work that we've done in the forest management would affect, like, what his answer would be to that. Because that's a, type of, it's not a trail, but there are trails that skidders are on and things like that. So I'm very curious about that. And then the second thing is, there will be, like, Act 250 would be triggered in some way or not triggered. And that there's actually quite a bit of guidance on trail development in terms of Act 250. And I think for having a larger investment in doing a site plan and those types of things usually happens when you do trigger Act 250, but there's a fairly robust process for seeing whether or not that happens. And so it would be good too to talk to him about whether, like, how that dovetails with the ideas specific to Richmond. Because I think we'd want to know, is the potential trail development, is that going to be a trigger for Act 250 or not? And
We
then,
didn't discuss Act 250 at all. That didn't come up.
so that's like, in the trail building world, that's like the number one thing that people think about is like, in terms of having to do like an engineering site plan and all of those things. So if it is triggered, then there is a lot of work to do, and that's fine. Like that, that makes sense if it gets triggered. And then if not, then yeah, and there's very specific criteria for that. So that would be another good question. When he comes to talk to us, we
Right.
can discuss that.
Yeah, so I think just the main takeaways are that we are enmeshed in his world now, and we want to get it into our timeline in the proper place. Just as far as we're moving forward, so that we
Yeah.
don't get kicked way back, going down our road of getting ready to present the plan to, say, the select board. And then,
Right.
we've got this piece here. Oh, wait.
So it sounds like next steps include, and I'll get to you, Paul, I see your hands up, I'll get to you in a minute. Include inviting him, coming up with a list of questions we want to answer, maybe giving them to him ahead of time.
Yes,
having him
that's a
come
really
to
good
the
idea.
meeting.
Mhm.
And is that something we should delegate tonight for people to come up with questions? So we spend 3 minutes brainstorming some questions and then hand them to your committee to look into that further.
That sounds like a good idea. I think that's a great idea. And then I think like blocking out like a good chunk of time on the agenda.
Yeah.
And when he's available to come.
And also to figure out what all the public review processes are. And then I'm really interested in, this is town land. And so if the town has to prepare this plan, who in the town is going to do that? Because it would seem to be, it's the landowner's responsibility. And if they don't have the capacity, is this something we want to roll into the management plan contract? Or do we want to have 2 contracts and either the same person can bid on both, or depending on how different the skills are? Any other thoughts, Ian?
Well, just at a practical level, I think the number one question is when Tyler says that this calls for a professionally drawn up site plan. Have we already got the professionally drawn up materials?
Yeah.
No.
So we have the Arrowwood report on the conditions, the ecological conditions. We have the state natural resources agency has very accurate, very precise details about terrain with 10 1-foot contours, I think, from which you can.
So your question for him then, when he comes with, can we prepare our own site plan with the professional materials that we have?
Yeah, do we really need to start it from scratch with a professionally drawn up site plan, or can we provide the materials that have already been drawn up by professionals?
Before we get too deep in this, Melissa, do you want to write down some of these questions and then we can?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out whether we should just, whether we
yeah.
should be writing them or if we should just
Let me just-
hold off and send them to you.
Yeah, why don't you, that's good. Why don't you send them to me and then I'll bring them to our next subcommittee meeting.
Okay, I'm just afraid they'll disappear from our brains once the meeting.
Well, I also wonder, I don't want to inundate him with 30 questions. I
Right.
feel like if we spent 3 minutes, we could probably come up with like
Okay.
6 leading questions that would be a good basis for the conversation. And then
Okay.
we're gonna have a lot more questions when we talk to him. It's not gonna be
Okay.
super
I
complicated.
have 2 of these written down.
Are you,
Oh,
you
okay.
wanna know?
I
Yeah,
I have,
thank
I
you.
have one that do we need site plans other than what we already have?
Mhm.
Who would be in charge of preparing additional materials, given that it's town land?
And the Act 2, is Act 250 triggered and under what conditions? How do you want
Yeah.
to phrase that?
Yeah, it could be like, what consideration should we give to Act 250 in terms of trail development, and what's the process? How does that process dovetail with the process he's laid out for the site plan and the engineering and things like that?
Yeah. I have one, which is where's all this written? I can't find it in the town documents.
Yeah, I'd really like to
Zoning
know
regulations.
if
I've
it's,
combed through
Uh,
all of them for
well,
trails, for development,
see.
I mean, it's all about roads and sewers. There's exactly
Uh,
one paragraph on trails that I've found.
yeah, so Melissa, I don't know that we need to answer that question, but I agree with
It's
you
in there
that,
somewhere. Where-
well, yeah, like,
About the slope, that's section 5.2.51
Of
of the
what?
zoning regulations. I
Oh, yeah,
believe.
okay, all right.
and I'd be interested in knowing how much of this is Richmond, unique to Richmond versus Richmond tying into state requirements. There was also an issue early on, in order to do the parking lot, the DRB decided that we were recreation land, and we were like, no, we're forest land. And that gets to that issue of the forest, management plan. They have a lot of their own rules on how you can build the slopes and things like that. And that was Ethan's responsibility as a state forester in making sure we complied with that.
Well, Cecilia, he looked up that June 10th, 2020 decision in the beginning of our meeting where we got a waiver variance, I believe he called it, for a frontage setback for the
Right.
parking lot. And he said, so we don't need to return to the DRB when zoning we only need to return to the DRB when the zoning administrator, which is him, considers it necessary. And at that same time, that June 10th, 2020, our usage as a recreational facility was approved at
Right,
that time.
Right, I
Yeah.
understand that. So
Okay.
but
Okay.
what I'm saying is we were forced to declare this was a recreational
Right.
facility. When we pushed against it, we're like, no, we're not, because there's a whole set of rules that were coming down on us from the DRB if we're a recreational facility, and we're like, we're not tennis courts, we don't
Right.
have playgrounds.
But
and
it happened
bathrooms.
nevertheless.
We're a forest, you
Yeah.
know?
Right, okay.
And they didn't, we felt at that time we were miscategorized, but in order to get the parking
I
lot
got
through, they had
Okay,
to
I
make
got
it into a
Yeah.
recreational facility.
Yeah.
So is there another category that's more appropriate for us,
Can we
that
be
would be
recategorized?
less onerous?
I think he somewhat answered that, like this decision, like what's done is done there, but I mean, we can always ask.
Yeah, I remember Wright was like, that's not, that's misrepresenting. He had handled like all the work with the town at that point.
Great. I got 6 good questions here.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would ask, what other activities such as forest management, education, agriculture, like the other things that are in the management plan would also trigger the same review process?
while you're typing, is it okay if I ask Paul? His hand's been up for a while. Paul, what's your thoughts on this?
My initial thought is I feel like this is overreach on Tyler's part. I understand, my feeling is he's being pressured to see it one way, when he can maybe, I don't think this is unprecedented, really. Like there's no other, the river trail certainly didn't go through that type of process. It just seems odd that this is all of a sudden a concern late in the game. And my other comment would be, before maybe you meet with Tyler or have Tyler, you're asking him for advice, but he's also somebody who can quash what you're trying to do. There's folks on the RMT board who are very well versed in Act 250 and the legal aspect, who are lawyers in the legal aspect of building trails in the state of Vermont, and especially around this area. I would say to reach out to them and see what they have to say, and see about the applicability of local zoning regs to trail development in a forest parcel. It just seems really odd that, to come up with a detailed engineering plan for a trail going through the woods. I've sat through DRB meetings and I've seen those type of plans, and that's pretty extensive. And it seems super overkill for what you're trying to accomplish. So I would suggest you reach out to some experts, on whether it be RMT people or somebody else who's knowledgeable about that, and see if you bump up. I don't think he's going to know the question on the trail development stuff with Act 250. I know there's people who look at that constantly at RMT, like when we're doing the adaptive trails in Bolton. We're very conscious of how much trail we could build or not build, and what's included in that, and you got to stay under the limit.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
There's resources out there. I think it would behoove you to take a look at them, and it's just an odd thing to be asking Tyler for advice, but he's also the guy who's ruling, or it'll be the DRB, but I don't know. I'm just. It's odd that would fall under his purview at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so what we're hearing, I think, is that this is unprecedented. It's never been done with a trail plan in other situations, certainly in Richmond. And it also creates a precedent in the sense that if we comply with this interpretation of the zoning regulations, then everybody else is going to have to.
The number down, but let me.
So it's
this is five.
Yeah, you could go as far as to say it'd be the end of public trail building in Richmond, because it'd be prohibitively expensive for Trails Committee to ever reroute anything or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time. So as a plan going forward, it sounds like we have a bunch of questions. Any additional ones we can forward to the committee to sort of figure out the wording and a number we actually want to do. We'll invite Tyler to the next meeting. It sounds like maybe we should invite an expert in Act 250 trail building and other places to come to the meeting as well and hear what Tyler is saying, and maybe be a secondary source of information for the committee, maybe at the same time. So I'm not sure how the chairs can think about that, but.
Well, I just wondered, Chase, would it be useful for you to reach out to the RMT director to be that person, maybe,
Sure.
since they've already offered to help out, and that would be hugely helpful to get their perspective on trail development in Act 250.
Yeah. And I have one additional question, is where else have people done this? What other examples they can show us? When we hear the word engineered, we think, well, wherever he he thinks these rules apply. Preferably Richmond, but if not Richmond, what? Because I'm wondering if they're really Richmond specific versus the Richmond interpretation of state rules. Act 250 is a state rule. Yeah, so maybe bringing both of them to meetings and asking them to share some input. All right, is it okay if we move forward? All right, we have a plan for that. Proposal for a writer to help revise our management plan. So just looking at the time, it's 10 of. If people want to go over, that's fine, but I personally cannot stay past 8:15. Looking ahead to the short reports, I will table the one comment I was going to make at the end of the meeting.
Yeah,
A couple of the other things can be really brief announcements. Because it seemed like the other big thing is this hiring a writer of some sort, help revise our management plan. And it seems like we would need a subcommittee to help write that scope of work. Included in the information for this meeting was like a template of how Richmond solicits those kinds of proposals. Josh Aronson said he would work with us on this. And it would be useful to know if now for zoning reasons, we would need additional help. And it sounds like the Selectboard, Conservation Commission are all willing to help pay for this. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other resource we have, of course, is the RFP for that Arrowwood responded to. And that gives a lot of background information about the Andrews Forest, but also kind of gets the template of how to explain the qualifications of people bidding and and what are the expectations, the scope. So yeah, we have resources to start with.
Great. Yeah, we've been
also,
through this before.
Yeah, there may be situations, if we can find them other towns that have written management plans that look good and identify how they were able to do that.
So to that point, Jeanette Malone forwarded to me the Bolton forest plan. Forget the name of it now. Preston Pond. And it looked excellent. It was similar to what we're doing. It was 37 pages and ours was 36 or whatever. So similar in content, but it was more clearly laid out than our initial plan. So that's one example. And we thought we could follow up and figure out who wrote that. It wasn't clear at all from it. And Daniel, I think you said at the last minute, there are people that just do this and I agree. I mean, some of them that come out of the Field Naturalist program, they write those kinds of things. People that do consulting work for the land trust, all kinds of things. So I think we can find people to do it. And it is a specific skill set and there are good examples in the region. But it seems like for both hiring Melissa Levy, for hiring Sinuosity Arrowwood, which is a bigger project, we're looking for something in between. We do need people to, like a little subcommittee to help draft that RFP and work with the town in that.
And do we need the RFP because we think it'll be more than a certain dollar amount?
Well, I'm using the word RFP generically. I think there is a way you could get like 3 quotes or something if it's a certain amount, but we still want to specify the scope of work should still be clear. However,
Right.
we solicit the person. And working
maximum
with
amount, I think, is specified.
yeah,
Can be one.
yeah, and Josh said he'd be willing to work with us on that. So you're right. There are more elaborate RFPs that have to go out versus finding a few people and getting quotes from them.
I
Which
think
is
there's
what
a
we
dollar
did.
amount that the
Yeah.
town
Yeah.
has that divides those.
Yeah,
two
I don't know if it's
categories.
25,000 or what. It's in that range.
We didn't do that for Melissa, right?
No, we just got three
We did get 3. Okay, yeah.
got 3 quotes.
Yeah, I think you still need to get quotes in any case. Yeah,
And submitted them to the town.
yeah, there's often a request for quotes versus request for proposal breakdown for these things. So the question is there anyone who wants to serve on that little subcommittee? Everybody's
Or-
subcommitteed out.
I know.
Or should the 2 subcommittees that have already been working on the management plan combine into one and adopt this as their next charge, is my suggestion.
Yeah, I was thinking this is when we start coming together because we're gonna get one person perhaps, or maybe a small team to pull that together.
So just give
I'm
it,
just looking for feedback
just give
on,
it to the two subcommittees to work on together, maybe, unless you want to, or you want to.
Yep, that sounds great.
I think everybody's on, well, except you, and I'm going off of one and you're
Yeah,
becoming
So
chair.
we could, for the purpose of writing that or proposing that, we could work as the four if you want to, but. Or we can, our three can just do it if you don't want to.
I'm happy to join it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay. So we have
All right.
a subcommittee of 4 for the RF.
So- Okay,
Should we vote on that? Or should we vote on that? Does anybody have a preference? I don't know that we need to. I'm just trying to think if it would help
Don't know either.
Josh. Or just to be super clear in the minutes
Well,
then
okay.
that,
Are you okay with that?
that the management plan committee and the trail stewardship plan committee will merge and work with the town to solicit either proposals or quotes for professionals to help rewrite the management plan. That sound like we're all in agreement on that? To me, the main reason for voting was just so we'd have a motion, people knew what their mission was
That's
going
the
forward.
right amount of specificity without having too much
Okay.
specificity, I think.
Good.
Mhm.
All right. So then I won't ask for a motion and vote, if that's cool with folks.
Great.
All right.
Great.
All right, and of course, my thing keeps dying, so the next agenda item will have to wait till I put in my 17 letter password. Okay, scope of project and skills, qualifications, experience required, and looking at the template in the package. Okay, 7:35 draft signage for kiosk fee package. I think Ian pulled that out. Do you want to say any comments on that?
Melissa found this.
An
Which
archival piece.
I actually, I copied it and highlighted it.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you.
So those are what's in red needs to be altered. Or revised or updated or something and then with the idea that this can be put in the kiosk and then people know what the rules are when they enter.
Right, so I was thinking that it would be really nice to just get something there now. I know that things might change with the rewrites that are happening, but to get
Yeah.
some basic, what's hanging there now is quite old and there's not anything like this.
Yeah.
there. So,
So just for the people online, what Ian held up was an Andrews Community Forest sign that was made in the past, which is included in the minutes or in the meeting packet. And he's recommending some minor changes, getting it printed out, plasticized, and put out there. And these are the changes. Does anybody want me to pass that around? It was in the packet.
Well, those are what needs changing.
Yeah, right,
Mm.
that would
red
need
is
to be
what needs to
changed. I just want to add, my students years ago, when we were still at the interim stages, came up with some material and both educational and rules kind of based stuff to put on the kiosks, which we never quite got up there. But some of the key things at the time we determined were just highlights around hunting season, just a notification to people there that hunters will be there and you should be wearing colors, and also notification about ticks because it's a very ticky place. And if
Oh, yeah,
people were
there's
bringing
nothing on there.
school kids, well, it could be a different thing. It doesn't all have to be in this. So this is great because it's the rules sort of engagement.
Mhm.
But if we want to put up a seasonal thing about ticks and about hunting, those were two of the things that were identified back then as being useful on a kiosk. In addition to maps, I think there was one map that has the current trails that isn't particularly well labeled, but we should be working on that in the future. This can still go up.
It should be specified which, if any, trails permit bicycles.
Yeah, and we haven't come to a conclusion on that
Um,
right now, I don't think.
I think we each have proposals in each of our documents.
Yeah.
But,
And that can be added when we add a map and,
yeah. That's why it can be nice to have like like the kiosks you see at state parks where they have like you can put up and take down stuff really easily. It's like underneath some like plastic
right,
glass thing.
That'd be good.
Because then you don't have to like laminate something in there. It sits, you're like, oh, I don't really want to change it now because I laminated it.
right.
So I don't, that's like a bigger question, but we can also think about how to do this so that we can update stuff fairly regularly and not have to like remove 10 signs that we put all over.
You make a
just
good
to
point.
change.
It would probably take less time to go over there, build a small wooden frame and
Put some
Put the cork-
plexiglass.
Yeah.
put some plexiglass up, then like laminate a bunch of
Right.
posters.
Right, and I was just thinking of kind of getting a quick and dirty one up there for
Yeah.
now. I'm happy to take it to Staples and laminate one,
Yeah.
just to have something there. I mean, there's really.
Melissa, I work with a laminator.
Oh, you do? Oh. Sweet.
All right, so is there any debate on the changes or any concerns?
Those seem great.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay, so let's empower a combination of, I don't know if it's Melissa, Ian, or Chase to get
Chase
this
and
up on the board.
I can print and laminate. If maybe someone else could do the edits and just email it to me,
Okay,
the formatting.
so maybe Ian, is that something you can do because you've already sort of done it?
I flagged what needs working on, but yeah, and I think the subcommittees anyway have identified how to make those changes. I think some of them could be debatable, some of them not.
It seems like, I don't know if everybody's read it, the big changes are saying that forest is open only during daylight hours.
That's in the management plan.
And then for walking, running, skiing, non-mechanized recreation, including hunting, so people know that. It has a line on ATV and bikes, or whatever. ATVs, bikes, motorcycles, and other types of mechanized transport are not permitted, except I thought bikes were permitted.
Bikes are permitted, so we have to take bikes, take off that.
Okay,
bikes and non-mechanized,
Add it to the permitted.
right, bikes
right.
needs to move.
yeah, and then during hunting seasons, please use safety colors. We could make that bigger, whatever. Please park only in the slots, stay on mapped trails, keep pets on a leash or under your control.
Yeah, is that agreed then that what's been proposed is unleash below power lines, not permitted above?
Well, right now, these are the rules. So if we're gonna have a discussion
From
about where to
2018.
have dogs, that's,
Okay.
we won't decide that in the next 5 minutes, I
This is a
think.
temporary.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's okay.
yeah,
Yeah, and you could even put something on there that says,
Temporary.
yeah,
ones.
we are like in the process of doing the management plan. These are temporary, but
because it's true in the plan that Caitlin talked about, dogs had to be on leash. I think, below the power line or maybe on leash
There
everywhere.
are two different recommendations, yeah.
Yeah, and we haven't worked that out, but if we want to get something up this fall, before we work all that out, then we could say, we could even call them interim rules. These are being
That's great.
discussed, check in with the meetings every week
Okay.
or more,
So
something.
go beyond the 2018 management plan.
No, I was thinking we'd stick with the 2018 because
Okay.
we haven't
Oh, in which
actually
case-
decided on anything else.
In which case.
But let them know that they're interim and we're working on it.
Okay.
And you should come to the meeting if you have an opinion
Mm.
or join the committee.
4 of you, there's gotta be 4 of you out there, or 3 of you, or 6.
So I was just saying that, does anybody have on any other viewpoint on whether we should just put up the current rules for that were true as of 2018 and then just indicate that they're
Yep.
being reviewed?
Yep, I think that's right.
People are okay with that?
So we have-
So I'll revise this and send it to the others for others, or just send it direct to Chase.
Yeah, if you want to send it to everybody for an okay,
I think, yeah, for an okay, that's permitted, isn't it?
yeah, I think that's, and then Chase will,
Yeah.
okay,
Print it on the school district printer.
yeah, and encourage schools to go there. That was always a thought. Okay, that was draft signage. Short reports, as I said, I'm gonna hold off on what I was gonna suggest. It was from a talk I went to recently. It was an interesting way of thinking how to manage recreational versus conservation issues, but and then crossing paths of recreation and forest management. It said Daniel and Ian participated in that website. Was that true?
There's a webinar, but yeah, we can skip
Webinar.
that. We could do it. I mean, it was nothing.
Okay,
Yeah, there was there were three speakers, but one of them was
Ethan Tapper.
Ethan Tapper, who had some very pertinent comments. One of them, he really emphasized education, and he emphasized communication so that there aren't surprises when people show up at the forest.
yeah, that's particularly an issue when you're cutting trees. So you be. And did they take that webinar so people were
Yeah.
interested?
Yep, I can send it to you.
Okay, we can circulate it or,
Yep, I'll send it to you.
great, okay, sure, or the whole committee.
Okay.
If people are interested. All right,
Next meeting.
oh wait, invasive species, invasive plant control. I think that's worth mentioning. There was the update from Ethan Tapper, but there are hired people that he's found money to implement the invasive species removal plan that he helped develop and we approved in the past. And that's ongoing. I forget the timing of that. If you go back to that.
Yeah, I think that's already happening from his email.
Let me just see, Tapper email. I don't see the timing of that.
It doesn't say the timing on that email.
Yeah, okay. But if we see a small crew of people out there, it says he'll be working west of the truck road, south of the power lines, east of the recreational trail in the southwest corner. So it sounds like no trail closures are necessary. He'll keep us posted.
Okay.
So, and that's being paid for by the state.
Great.
All right, any other questions, comments, announcements?
Next meeting,
That's the last one. Next meeting will be going back to our regular fourth Monday. Or is it last Monday? Hold on.
it says for.
Fourth
On the
Monday,
website, it says fourth.
at 6. And starting at that meeting, Daniel and Ian will be co-chairs.
Good.
Well, we should send a note to the select board asking to.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we have to prove.
Yeah, they have to vote.
Mhm.
And there's several things already we're agendizing, perhaps hearing from Zach, the person who applied, inviting Tyler, maybe inviting an Act 250 expert. There are a number of other things, but I think those are captured in the notes. And with any luck, we'll have more applicants to consider. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Segundo.
discussion?
I'm gonna abstain.
All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? We're all done. Thank you very much. Thank you for the shortest term as co-chair of this committee.
Thank you, Cecilia, for doing that. That was a short, but yeah, intense.
Productive tenure.
Yeah, it was just,
Tenure.
it had to happen, even if I wasn't the best person.